And let's listen, though, to some tougher language, some harder language from Georgia's Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, who called out House Republicans this week in an interview with the PBS NewsHour.
It's not American. It's not democracy. This is not our finest moment. And my hope is that we quickly move past this.
Phil, what are you picking up about Republicans? On one side, you have Conway and others slowly moving there. And then you have the Lieutenant Governor of Georgia saying this is an abysmal development for the GOP. Where do they go in the coming days?
Well, Bob, I think most Republican elected officials, office holders, they agree with what the lieutenant governor just said. They're just afraid to say it out loud. Look, they understand how elections work. They understand that there are winners and losers when the people's votes are counted. And they understand that Joe Biden won 306 electoral college votes and leads the popular vote by 7 million votes. This wasn't that close of an election. They get it. They're just not able to say so publicly for their own political calculations because they so fear what President Trump could do to them. He remains incredibly popular with the Republican base. We've seen him torment the Republican governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, for weeks now, the Republican Secretary of State of Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, and he can set off that fury against any Republican elected official in any state in this country when he chooses to, and that Republican suddenly could face a primary challenge back home in their next election. And so they're cognizant of what they need to do to hold on to their own power within their Republican Party. And as long as Trump is the leader of that party, they're going to go along with him. And it's why you saw so many Republican members of Congress sign on to that brief this week to support that Texas case in the Supreme Court.
Molly, I've been picking up a similar vein in my reporting this week that Republicans, they know the conventional wisdom in Washington is, oh, President Trump's about to go away. Why don't you just break ranks? But they keep telling me, hey, he's not going away. As Phil said, he's going to be here in 2022. He may run again in 2024. So they're just trying to survive, trying to move forward. Kabuki theater, maybe a little bit, political branding protection in another way. But Molly, I was struck by a line you wrote this week. You said this is not a slow motion coup. Why is that important to understand?
I wrote that a couple weeks ago, that based on what experts were telling me about the plausibility of the attempt to overturn the election, that it just didn't seem like there was any merit to it that could go anywhere within the normal process, the normal system, the legal avenues that are available. And we've seen that very clearly with the court results in all of these courts all over the country. And then in the Supreme Court just tonight, which in its very brief refusal to hear the case gently sort of said that Texas had not presented a legally cognizable justification to interfere in another state's process, which is, of course, Supreme Court speak for there's no there. There's no legal basis for what you're trying to do here. One state telling another state how to run its elections. So at the same time, there is a real danger for democracy in normalizing these kinds of baseless challenges and making it a thing that people do after they lose elections, not to accept them. That, of course, is the bedrock of our democratic system, is that the winners and losers alike agree to the rules in advance and then abide by them. And so the question, I think, going forward is going to be, what role does President Trump want to continue to play in the Republican Party? Because this is the exact same vice grip he has had them in since 2015, when he threatened on a Republican debate stage to leave the party and run as an independent. And we've seen in polls that to this day, the vast majority of Republicans and Trump voters and Trump supporters say that they would prefer to vote for a Trump party than a Republican party if they had to make that choice. So, Republicans are going to have to deal with this for as long as Trump wants to make them.
Trump party reminds me of Teddy Roosevelt and the Bull Moose. Errin, you just heard from Molly. I mean, I'm struck by her point. Yes, it's not a slow motion coup, but it is a very serious moment for democracy. Earlier Friday, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut gave a passionate speech saying we just can't ignore, he said, speaking for Democrats, how serious this is for American democracy. What are you hearing from other Democrats about this reckoning for the country beyond just the exercise on branding and political protection for President Trump on the Republican side?
Well, Bob, I am from Georgia, and, hearing from Georgia Republicans in this moment is really not surprising, because the stakes are higher for them in this moment. They're dealing with this Senate runoff in which they need Republicans to believe that turning out to vote is actually going to make a difference, and then participating in a rigged election is really not a message that necessarily energizes or galvanizes voters. Now, the president, when he was down in Georgia last weekend, basically gave a message to Republicans saying, well, they stole the election from me, but don't let them steal it from David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. I don't know how effective a message that is going to be, but I mean, this is a state where issues of voter suppression have been at play for years, and the Republican Party has been accused of largely doing that voter suppression. And so the thought that is now potentially impacting their voters, the idea that if the system is not working, why participate in it, whether that could have an effect on depressing those voters is remarkable to consider indeed. But listen, it's exactly what Molly was saying. We know the outcome of this election. What is less clear is what this entire fiasco in the wake of the election. What effect is that going to have really on our democracy and in our electorate's confidence in just the idea of one person, one vote going forward?
Phil, can you just take a quick bite at this apple? I remember the subtitle of your book with Carol Leonnig, A Very Stable Genius. It's about the testing of America.
Well, that's exactly what this is, Bob. It's a testing of our country's foundational principles, of our country's democracy. And look, even as the Electoral College is going to meet Monday and that outcome seems clear, Joe Biden will probably almost certainly be certified as the president-elect, will be sworn in at the inauguration on January 20th. The reverberations of Trump's challenge to the election results could continue for years. You could have a situation where Joe Biden is acting as the president, through next year, and 30%, 40% of the American people think he is there illegitimately, think he lost the election, and that could have devastating consequences not only for the Biden presidency, but for Americans' faith and trust in our government, in our system, in our democracy, and who knows what sorts of changes could be around the bend if that's the kind of country we're living in.